June 15, 2004, the courtroom doors swung open to reveal a nation's gaze fixed on a single, immaculate figure, Martha Stewart, the queen of domestic perfection, now a defendant in a case that would redefine the limits of white-collar accountability. The air crackled with anticipation as the judge's gavel echoed, signaling not just a trial but a cultural showdown over wealth, influence, and the very definition of crime in America's upper echelons. Martha Stewart built an empire from the simple premise that anyone could create a beautiful, organized life. From best-selling cookbooks to a sprawling television network, she turned kitchens and gardens into symbols of aspirational living. By the early 2000s, her brand was worth billions, and her name commanded trust that transcended product endorsements. Yet beneath the glossy veneer lay a network of insiders, advisors, and corporate boards, a web that, when pulled, would expose a hidden undercurrent of privilege and secrecy. The story began in late 2001, when Clone Systems, a biotech firm developing a promising cancer drug, announced that the U.S. Food and Drug Administration was poised to reject its flagship product, Erbitux. The news sent Clone's stock plummeting. Unbeknownst to the public, a select circle of investors, including Stewart's close friend and Clone board member Samuel D. Sam Waxel, received confidential information about the pending FDA decision. Waxel, desperate to protect his holdings, warned Stewart that the stock would soon tumble. On December 27, 2001, armed with this tip, Stewart sold roughly 9,000 shares of Clone at $66 per share, just before the FDA announcement on December 28, which sent the stock down to $38. The timing was impeccable, and the profit, over $45,000, was swift. Yet the legality of the transaction hinged on whether Stewart had acted on non-public material information, a violation of securities law known as insider trading. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, launched an investigation that would stretch over 2 years. In August 2003, the agency filed a civil complaint accusing Stewart of securities fraud, conspiracy, and making false statements to investigators. The charges painted a picture of a high-profile individual who not only profited from illicit information but also tried to conceal her involvement. The case was no longer about a single trade. It was a test of whether the justice system could hold a cultural icon to the same standards as any other citizen. The courtroom drama unfolded under the glaring lights of New York's Southern District Court. Prosecutors, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael J. Dorsey, presented a narrative of calculated deceit. They highlighted phone records, emails, and testimonies from former Clone executives, establishing a clear chain of communication that linked Stewart directly to the confidential tip. The prosecution's star witness, former Clone employee Scott A. B. McDougal, recounted heated conversations that suggested Stewart knew the gravity of the information she received. Stewart's defense, spearheaded by attorney James A. Jim B. NKW, the name is fictional for narrative purposes, painted a different picture. They argued that Stewart's decision to sell was based on normal market considerations, and that she had no intent to defraud. They emphasized her lack of a formal fiduciary relationship with Clone, and suggested that the SEC's case rested on circumstantial evidence rather than direct proof of wrongdoing. The defense also tried to humanize Stewart, portraying her as a hardworking entrepreneur caught in a whirlwind of corporate intrigue. The trial, which lasted 3 weeks, was a media circus. Cameras captured Stewart's composed demeanor, her occasional sighs, and the occasional flicker of frustration in her eyes. The public watched as she answered questions about the stock-selling decision, the nature of her friendship with Waxel, and her alleged attempts to hide the sale. The prosecution's closing arguments were relentless. When a person of your stature uses insider information, you erode the very foundation of fair markets. The defense countered with a softer tone. The real crime here is the rush to judgment against a woman who built an empire through hard work, not deceit. On March 18, 2004, the jury returned a verdict that shocked both supporters and critics alike. Martha Stewart was found guilty on 3 counts: conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and making false statements to federal investigators. She was acquitted of the insider trading charge itself, a nuance that would fuel endless debate. The judge sentenced her to 5 months in federal prison, 5 months of home confinement, and 2 years of probation, along with a $30,000 fine. The sentence was a stark reminder that even the most polished public figures could be held accountable, but it also sparked a national conversation about the proportionality of punishment for white-collar offenses. The aftermath rippled far beyond the walls of the courtroom. Stock markets, already rattled by corporate scandals such as Enron, felt the tremor of a new reality. Celebrity executives could no longer assume immunity from legal scrutiny. Stewart's brand suffered an immediate hit, her television shows were suspended, and her stock in Martha Stewart Living Omnimedia plummeted. Yet, remarkably, the Martha Stewart empire proved resilient. Within months of her release, she launched a series of new product lines, authored another bestseller, and eventually returned to television, reinforcing the notion that fame can weather even the harshest storms. Legal scholars dissected the case for years, debating whether the punishment fit the crime. Some argued that the 5-month prison term was a symbolic gesture, intended to send a message to the financial elite that the law would not overlook privilege. Subscribe to The Verdict for more stories like this.